Welcome to the Sleepy G Show. I'm your host, your most. My name is Gomez, and today, another great day. And I am blessed to say I have an NHL retiree, though, but he's from the NHL. He has played with two of probably one of the greatest teams, Ottawa and the Florida Panthers. Congratulations to the Panthers, by the way, in the Eastern Conference Finals, beating my favorite hockey team in the whole wide world, New York Rangers. But he has a neutral thing, but we'll talk about that. I'd like to introduce coach Lance Pitlick, and he's also played for the Ottawa Senators and the Florida Panthers. We were just talking before the show. You actually got a call from the Panthers to send him a good luck, but you had to stay neutral. Let everybody know why you had to stay neutral.
Yeah. Hi, Alex, and thank you for having me on the show. Happy to be here, and I know that this is a semi-new venture for you. I, as well, am a podcaster, so you hit the milestone of the 50 episodes, and now you're going for 100. So keep it going. I know it's a
I,
fun.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So yeah, let's start the show off on a good note. Being that a lot of them probably are Ranger fans, is that I was watching the game, but yesterday morning, I got a call from a text from a former player asking if I would do a little quick video and say good luck to the boys. And I'm like, I thought about it for a while, but my nephew is with the Rangers, and I just texted him back, said, sorry, dude, I got to be neutral on this one. So great hockey game. I watched the first period. I go to bed early, but it was like you said, the four best teams were playing at the end, and New York was one of them.
I mean, for me as a Rangers fan, like I've never played a lick of hockey except for street hockey with my friends growing up. I never learned how to ice skate. I never learned anything. I remember my dad, I'll never forget, it was around 86, 87. My dad took me to my first hockey game ever, and it was Devils versus Rangers. And the funny thing is, the Devils had that Christmas jersey. I call it the Christmas jersey because it was the red.
Yeah.
And I said to my dad, "Who's the red, white, and blue team?" He goes, "That's New York Rangers." I go, "That's my team." And
Really, that was the moment.
that was the moment just because of the colors.
Wow.
I didn't know much about hockey. That was my very first hockey game. I was like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with hockey, but I never learned how to ice skate. Well, on top of it, in New Jersey, there's not really a lot of hockey rinks. So I
Yeah.
never really got a chance to learn, but I played a lot of street hockey with my friends.
Yeah.
And the New York Rangers became my love. And as you can see in the background, I have Messier with the Stanley Cup from '94, Lundqvist. I got Shaturkin jerseys, Richter jerseys, big Ranger fan, hockey gear all over the house. You know what I mean? Just like you. I noticed you have a lot of good pictures up there behind you.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a little bit of me over here, but these are all players that I train. That's my girl wall.
yeah.
Uh, so I'm lucky to be able to get in front of kids and still be part of the game. I got to remember that I can't let my wife go to your house. Sorry, I
No,
got
it's
the joke.
okay.
Um, I can't let my wife go to your house because we have a deal that if someone walked up and knocked on the door, each of us have a person. If Katy Perry came up and knocked on the door, she just has to politely say nice to meet you and then leave.
Uh-huh.
And for her, if Henrik Lundqvist came to the door, I'd have to leave. So she's not coming over to your house.
Oh man, I'll tell you this: if meeting Igor Lundqvist, Richter, even Van Viesbrook, throughout the years of being a Ranger fan, even Dan Blackburn, Kevin Weeks, any of those guys, I would just, I wouldn't even know what to do. I'd just be shocked and awed just to meet any of those guys because
Wow.
they're anybody, but like even for me, having you is like a legendary thing because you were an NHLer. You played the game. You actually went to university. No, you went to, was it the University of
Minnesota.
Minnesota?
University of Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I blanked out. A lot of good hockey players went to the University of Minnesota too. Um, you were drafted in 1986. Now we see the draft now in this 2022, 23, 24, all these drafts. Now in 86, I really wasn't watching the drafts at that point. You get selected in the ninth round, which used to be the Minnesota North Stars.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask this: 86, the night you're getting the draft. How were you feeling? What were you feeling when you were being drafted?
Well, first, you didn't have the coverage as you do today.
Mm-hmm.
Second, if you looked at when I was drafted in the ninth round, they don't even televise that anymore because they just put a big bulletin board with all the players that are left over. They give the GM a dart and he just put a blindfold on him and he shoots it at it, and whatever you get, that's where you're drafted for. So, no, it wasn't a big deal. I was, to be honest with you, it was in the summer. I
Mm-hmm.
was at a graduation party like 2 days after it happened, and someone
Okay.
said, "Hey, congratulations!" And I'm like, "What?" And they told me, and it was. So it wasn't a big deal. I had absolutely zero contact with them until they made it to the Stanley Cup, and I was playing at for the Gophers at the time, so you could
Okay.
get free tickets to go to the Cup game. So
Hey,
I
can't go wrong
parlayed.
with that.
Yeah, but no, the story would happen with that one then. So yes, it was a recognition, but it's nothing like how it's put on a pedestal today. I didn't even think that it was achievable to play at that level because I didn't have anyone that was really guiding me as a youngster. I didn't have any family members that played, uncles or aunts, and so I was just kind of going along. But it was nice to have that happen, and then obviously, as you progress through your career, and I got into college where the time came where I could maybe sign. An agent just came up to me that was representing a couple other players on the team and says, I think you can play college hockey. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
pro hockey. And he's like, you think I can get you a contract? I'm like, no way. All right. So he became my agent. His name's Jeff Solomon. He's with in management with the LA Kings now. But um, he got me a contract, and it's kind of an interesting story. I'll tell you real quick, just to get rid of the North Stars. But Bobby Clark was the GM at the time when I was
Mhm.
going to sign, and that was the same year that the following year, the San Jose Sharks were coming into the league.
Yeah, I remember that
So
actually.
yeah, so the Minnesota North Stars, something happened with the owners or whatever. They sold the team, but the owners were now the owners of the San Jose Sharks. So they had a draft and they split all the draft, all the current players of the North Stars, and they went to San Jose, and then they had a supplemental draft. So Bobby Clark tells me I'm going to sign, and this is before that happens. He says I don't want to sign a signing bonus into someone we may lose to San Jose next year. Like it was a lot. It wasn't
Yeah.
hardly anything. Uh, Almost a handshake with a 50-cent piece in his hand. That was about it. But they ended up releasing me. So how I ended up getting with Philadelphia is the guy who was a scout named Glenn Sonmore. He's no longer with us, but a hockey icon here in Minnesota. But he was a scout for the North Stars, and he really pushed hard to get me drafted by them. Well, when I got released by Bobby Clark, Glenn Sonmore now was scouting for the Philadelphia Flyers. So I called him and I told him what was going on, and this guy just kept giving me lifelines. And within 24 hours, he had the exact same contract on the table, but with Philly. So Bobby Clark, he comes back when he finds this out, and he says, "We'll give you that same contract." And my agent said, "I can't represent you if you go with the North Stars, because I'm just not going to roll like that because Philly stepped up." And I said, "All right, we're going with Philly," and that's
Right.
how I got Philly.
That's an amazing thing because you really don't hear a lot of those background stories when it comes to contracts. You know what I mean? Like what
Yeah,
you have to do because going to, Philadelphia, that's not an easy place to play hockey either. When you're talking metropolitan area, I always think of Philly is one of them,
yeah,
Devils, Rangers, Islanders. When you come in this, and before they was called the Metropolitan, always remember as the Atlantic Division.
yeah,
And back in the day. But it's funny because when you look at going to Philly, going to New York, going to New Jersey, or going to even Long Island, you're pretty much you're you're looked at more carefully, I think. You know what I mean? If you're going to play for four of these clubs in this area, you know what I mean? But I mean,
Do,
you go to
do you mean under social media? Like you're under more of a
not even social media,
microscope?
like, like as a fan point of view, like when someone gets signed here, like I remember when Igor Shesterkin came to the Rangers, I'm like, who? You know what I mean? Then I see his highlights, I'm like, oh, here's the
Yeah.
heir of Lundqvist. You know what I mean? People, the media here in New Jersey, in New York, and Philly, I know are always tough on players because they want championships. They,
Yep.
Flyers, Flyers, the Rangers, New Jersey. But when you look at other markets like Edmonton, where Edmonton, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, four Canadian teams, when you think about them, Canadian hockey is like legendary, and American born hockey players are looked at like secondary, which I think is not true. I think when you play hockey, no matter what, if you're from Canada or America, or even around the world, I should say, I think it's all equal players. But I know from seeing some of Canadian games, I actually had a chance to watch a couple Canadian games through my laptop and see some games, and compare them to the NHL. It's like you really can't. Some of those games up in Canada, because some of those are brutal. Um,
Yeah.
Now,
Um,
did you ever get a chance to play in like a Canadian league before you went to the Flyers, or?
no, well, no, I had some international competition in college. We went over to Europe and for before the season started as a team bonding thing. We played some semi-pro teams over there, but um, that was one of the biggest changes for me because at the time the University of Minnesota primarily only recruited out of Minnesota. So
Right,
up until 22 years old, I've only played with Minnesotans and one guy from Alaska and one guy from the St. Louis or from California, John Blue. So I turned pro, and now all of a sudden you got all these Europeans that are there, and then you got the Canadians, and then you got the French Canadians, and
right.
it's a melting pot. So it was different. I wouldn't say that it was easy because I look at a Russian that comes over here that doesn't speak English. I mean, that's got to be pretty doggone challenging, and
Hmm.
you live in a small space. But um, going to Philly, I went into camp, and again, an eye opener. We were coming back from an exhibition game, and it might have been with New Jersey or Long Island or something. But I
Right,
remember we were going on a bus, and I think it was New Jersey. So we went and played. It was the big boy game, and then the rookies played.
right.
So I was in the rookie game, and two buses. We're coming back, and we get to the hotel because we're still in training camp. And one of the guys, he was a high draft pick, and he's got this really nice red IROC. And at the time, that was a pretty sweet car,
Oh, it
you know.
was, yeah. I remember those cars.
So I was sitting right next to him. He was one of the guys that we kind of connected right away. So we're sitting there and we're driving into the parking lot, and I go, Army, look at that. Someone's got the same car as you. And as it passes, he sees the license plate and it says license plate, and he goes, "That's my car."
Oh,
So apparently, it's commonplace that we were over in Cherry Hill, I think, for training
yes.
camp, and people, individuals, I don't know, go over there and they grab steal a car, and then they go across the bridge and they strip it, and then you'll find it, burnt or whatever. And uh, so that was kind of an eye opener. He actually got out of the car and started chasing the guy. It was awesome.
That is so. That's typical Philly fare for you. But still, anybody who steals a car, no matter if you're a sports player or not, you're going after that guy.
Oh, that was
I
hilarious.
oh my
But
God.
yeah, so I never got to play in an NHL exhibition game with them.
Mm,
I was with the Hershey Bears for 4 years, and I didn't get called up. I didn't think that I deserved to get called up, that I was ready. I didn't think I could play at that level. And our third year there, I was a healthy scratch at the end of the season for like 3 months. So I didn't even know if I was gonna, be there the following year. So, Philadelphia, I didn't have much time there other than a cup of coffee during training camp. Most of my time was spent in Hershey, Pennsylvania on the bus.
Now after that, you do go up to Ottawa.
Yep.
That's your next stop. Now, how did you get from Philly? Now you're going from Philly to Ottawa. Was that for a trade, or was that a free agency?
So I told you that my third year, I was a healthy scratch at the end. And why I asked the coach a question, as I said, because we had one at home, and then we were going on the road, I think to Rochester, New York, to play the Amerks. And we get there, and he's telling everyone who's playing or not playing, and he tells me I'm not playing. So I let everyone go, and I pull him aside and I said, "What's going on, coach? You never change the lineup after a win." And he says, "It's coming from up top. They want this, a younger guy playing, whatever." So that went on for 3 months. They wouldn't send me down. They wouldn't trade me. Not like I was tradable. I mean, I was a stay-at-home defenseman, physical, block shots. Hundreds of those guys out there. But I wasn't invited to Philadelphia that fourth year, because I signed a 4-year deal. This was to report. The letter that I got was, report to Hershey on this day and you'll be reassigned from there. So right away I went in feeling a lot of confidence that I was going to stay there. So I went there, and there was a coaching change, and you're going through camp, and early on there's guys that are there one day and all of a sudden they're not. And probably 3 days into it, the kid sitting next to me, he got, told by the trainer to go in to see the coach. And next thing, he comes in, packs his bag, and he's gone. So the next day, I'm sitting taking off my gear, and the trainer comes and says, "Hey, coach wants to talk to you." So I go, you're just like, all right, here it is. This is the moment. So I go in there anticipating the worst, and his name's Jay Leach. He coached in Boston as an assistant coach. I believe he was with Maine during his college years, but he bounced around for a long time. I don't even know. He might still be coaching.
He could be coaching in the minor and the AHL probably.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a while.
He brought me into his office, and he sat me down, and started asking me about, where I grew up and family and that. And then he goes, "You ever play forward?" Just like out of the blue. We were talking about my family. He goes, "You ever play forward?" And I kind of paused, and I go, "Coach, the only position I can't play for you is goalie. If I can stay here, wherever you want me to play, I'll play." And he says, "All right, awesome." And, that was the start. So our season started, and he ended up keeping me around, but I wasn't a starter. I was a healthy scratch the first 4 or 5 games, maybe. I can't remember exactly. But I do remember this. We were in Cornwall, Ontario, playing what is now the Colorado Avalanche. It was the Quebec team before they moved. Nordiques. And I'm a healthy scratch, so I'm sitting up in the year before. I could tell you every rink in the AHL that has the best chicken fingers, chocolate chip cookies, where the little hideouts are. And but I'm sitting there, and we're settling into the seat, and the game starts, and Cornwall just has our number, and they're probably up 7-rip after 2 periods. But this was the funny part, was every time that they score, the scoreboard had fireworks that would go off, like real fireworks. So they're going off, and after the second period, I'm sitting with a buddy, and there's an usher sitting near us. They're standing near us, and I see someone with like a grocery cart full of stuff going across the catwalk towards the up in the ceiling towards the scoreboard. So I asked the usher, I said, "What the heck are they bringing over there right now during the game?" He said, reloading the scoreboard. It only has enough fireworks for 7 goals.
Oh
So,
my God.
so they ended up beating us. I got into the next game after that loss, and the team kind of turned around. The end of that season, we ended up playing Cornwall again in the first round of the playoffs, and I had a pretty good playoff. And there was a scout or an assistant GM or something that was at that series, and that's how that opportunity came. But another interesting story is that now that we talked about the Minnesota North Stars, they split the players with the San Jose Sharks, but then the team ends up moving to Dallas.
Yeah.
So in that interim, when Minnesota is without an NHL team, they have an IHL team called the Minnesota Moose, which is now up in Winnipeg. I hope everyone's taking notes, because I'm going to be asking some questions to see if you've been listening. There's a lot of information here.
There is a lot of information, because it's like, if I had a map, I should have brought a map with me just to point out where everything is right now, because I remember the Mooses were in Minnesota, and I forgot that now they are in the Canadian League, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. So the Moose was there, and I didn't have anyone at the end of the season. I didn't have anyone offering me a contract except the Minnesota Moose. And who was there? Our buddy that drafted me, that got me drafted with the North Stars, was with Philly, Glenn Sonmore. He's now the GM of this team. And he did his homework. My wife was pre-med. She did her internship when I was in Hershey. So she was going to enroll at the University of Minnesota that fall.
Right.
So that opportunity came. Glenn Sonmore knew about it, and it was perfect timing. So he offered me the contract, and it would have been the most money I ever made playing. Probably about $40,000 more 50 than I did any previous year. My wife was going to start school. I could play at home. My family and friends come watch. So I told him I needed a couple days, and he says, "All right, 2 days it is, and then you tell me." And then Ottawa came in, out of nowhere, and offered a contract. And it was my wife who was the one, once we talked about it, said, Minnesota's not connected with a NHL team. Ottawa is. So I'd say sign with Ottawa. I can delay going to school one more year, and if it doesn't work out, we'll come back. So that's how I ended up in Ottawa.
And that's an amazing thing. And you actually got your first NHL game at the age of 27. So
yes, 27-year-old rookie.
so as a 27-year-old rookie, you're going to go play hockey here, and it makes you wonder what's that feeling like, because everyone has their own traditions. Every rookie gets nervous. First NHL game ever. What was your mind? Anybody's mind had to be racing. I had to assume with NHL coming up, you know what I mean? It's got to be going crazy.
So it's funny that you asked that, because I mentioned that I do a podcast as well. It's called the Hockey Journey Podcast, and I don't have my sling on, but I'm about 4 weeks out of rotator cuff surgery. So I was down in Florida, and they still are having internet problems because of the last hurricane they had. So I couldn't do any podcasts because it kept cutting in and out. So I had to pivot, like, how am I going to make progress here? So, I do some solo episodes where I would, discuss books that I've read and stuff. So I'm like, what's something that's a common question that people ask? And they always ask, like, what was it like playing in your first NHL game? So I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do an episode called My First NHL Game. So that's what I've been scripting. So the story, 27 years old, I'm in the minors playing in their minor league team was in Prince Edward Island. You ever hear of it?
Heard of it. Never been there.
Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. This is a really small island, Prince Edward Island. The only way to access it back then was by ferry by plane. They didn't have a bridge. They now have a bridge. Like the ferry ran during the
Right
winter.
there.
You know, we got stuck on that doggone ferry. I don't know how many times for like 5-6 hours because you couldn't get to the dock.
Hold on. Something just, I just lost everything. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, just everything just blanked out for a second. I apologize.
Nope, I don't know. The technology is the technology.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm here, and I'm like, no, don't. Ah!
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So,
No. Yeah.
I was sorry. Right where you were just talking about the island, the small little island that you were at. I apologize on
Yeah,
that.
Prince Edward Island. So
Prince
it
Albert
didn't
Island.
have a bridge. The only way to get there on and off was by ferry, and it didn't run 24 hours. So you could only get on or off certain times of the day. So it was a Sunday afternoon. We had just got back from a road trip, or a Sunday morning, and I was tired. We had a day off, and nothing really gets going on Prince Edward Island until the afternoon on Sundays. So
Mhm.
I'm sitting on the couch reading the paper, and my wife was cooking us some breakfast. And out of the blue, she pokes her head out of the kitchen and says, "Maybe if you fight more, you'll get called up." Because that was a lockout year too, and the lockout had just ended.
No,
So, I'm like, no, if I can't get called up doing what I do, it's not worth it. Because I just, when you're a college kid and you haven't been exposed to fighting, your first fights when you're 23, 22 years old, you got a lot of catching up to do. And the only way to get good is through the school of hard knocks. I didn't want to do that. I did it, but I didn't, go look for it.
right.
But anyways, so, I just, said no and kind of ignored it. And we had breakfast, and probably an hour went by again, and the phone rang, and it's the head coach of our team, and he says, "Hey, I love these calls." He goes, you're going up to the show, man." He said, "Get over to the rink as quick as you can, because you're on a flight in 2 hours." So all of a sudden, you're just like, I'm not thinking about, should I start fighting more in the NHL?
Right.
It's happening. So my wife, we're in panic mode, and we quickly pack up a bag. I get over to the rink, get my gear, and then we get to the airport, and all of a sudden we just had like a pause where all the noise just stopped, and she said, "What should I do?"
Exactly. Like, what am I going to do now? You're going to the show.
Yeah. So I said, "I have no idea." I said, "I got to get in the airport." I said, "Let me get the lay of the land, and I'll, call you, and, and we'll see in a day or two, maybe you can come up." So got to Ottawa, dropped off my gear. They dropped me off at the hotel. And I called her just to let her know that's our deal. You're traveling. When you get there, you tell everyone you're safe. And usually she's really chatty, and she's just like, "Oh, you probably had a really long day. Why don't you grab some food, and I'm sure you're gonna watch a movie, and then just get ready for tomorrow." I'm like, "Awesome." So like, this is click. Let's go. Order
Yeah.
up a movie, room service, and do that. I didn't sleep a wink. It was just a wrestling match with my blanket and pillows that whole night. Woke up, went to the pregame skate. A couple teammates of mine asked if I wanted to go out for lunch. Did that, and then hockey players are a big fan of afternoon naps, so I was down for the nap. And I want to get to the rink around 3 hours before, so I was just getting ready to walk out the door, and all of a sudden there was a knock on it, and I open it up, and it's my wife, and I'm like,
Uh,
"What are you doing here?" And she goes, "It's my first game too, and I'm not going to miss it." So she was, why she wasn't chatty is she had to get in the car and get on the last ferry to get off the island,
um,
because there weren't any flights. And then she drove through, I don't know how many snowstorms and crappy weather, getting there all night. And then so she took a nap and for a couple hours, and then headed over to the rink, and we both had our first game that night.
and that's a good keep of our wife, because to travel through, you know, the island, you got that, like you said, that short window
Yeah.
that out, and then drive through how many snowstorms to get to the arena at Ottawa. That's an amazing thing, because that just shows how important she is to you and how she is up to her. You know what I mean? To both of you guys, to that
Well,
love. You know what I
the
mean?
girl, yeah, the girlfriends, the wives, they keep the ship going, and when the season's over, there's usually kind of a figuring out each other
Hmm.
again because she's used to, they're used to us being gone, and
Right.
now we're home all the time, and we're screwing up their schedule,
Yeah. So
and
everything's like, well, it's like once you get everything figured out, the season's about to start too again.
right. And then you're like, all right, I get to get out of here now again. So a lot is handled on their shoulders, especially when you got kids involved in that. And we're very lucky to have them in our lives. And you just hope that you don't get traded mid-season.
That's yeah, no, I've heard like the recently when the Rangers made a trade for Alex Weddenberg, his wife was pregnant, and I remember
Yeah,
hearing about that. So you
yeah,
always that's always something that you always worry about, getting trade mid-season or something happens. Um, then you played for Ottawa for a couple of years, I believe, if I remember correctly, and you go down to Florida Panthers.
yep.
Um, now we said congratulations to them. That's all they get out of me. But you go to Florida. How was that from going from Ottawa now going to Florida?
Yeah. Well, my my goal when I started playing pro hockey was to play in one NHL game and to get a hockey card.
Hmm.
So at that, then you reach that, and then let's get another contract, and then since I was 27, I only had a few more years till I reached free agency at
Right.
31. So things have changed now, but all of a sudden I'm an everyday NHL player. We coming off a really good year with them, and I'm a free agent. And I was lucky that I had. Well, I didn't even realize this. I almost was a New York Ranger as well,
Oh wow.
because in that there was three teams that offered contracts, and that's when you get to free agency, you're just praying that there's more than one team
Right.
that gets in there because then things get a little more lucrative. And for me, I wasn't making a lot of money. Like my first contract with Ottawa, I was making Canadian dollars. So at the time, I don't know what the tax rate is, but to exchange it to US, you lose 50% basically, and
Hmm.
then the taxed at 50%. So I could have made more my first couple years in Ottawa playing in the minors than in the NHL because of that. So
Yeah.
when I made it to free agency, and you know they were talking the numbers that they were talking, I was like, wow, that's this is pretty cool. But I had three teams interested: New York Rangers, Florida Panthers, and the Nashville Predators. So um, New York, the cost of living, the tax rate. Sorry, fan. I that was X'd off the list right away because I had two other places that had no state income tax.
Right.
So,
I get
as
you.
a guy at the end of his career, I'm gonna penny pinch everything. So then Nashville was an expansion team, and I wasn't getting any younger. So I thought Florida was probably the best opportunity to maybe have a chance at winning the cup. And that first year we did. I thought that we had a chance to win it, and I think we were the best team in the NHL at the All
Mhm.
Star break. And at that time, Florida was still trying to grow that market.
Yeah.
So during the All Star break, they hosted a skills competition where any players that were in town, you'd go out there and do it.
Hmm.
Well, there was a shootout competition, and Peter Worrell, do you know him? Remember
I've
that
heard
name?
of him. Yes, I do.
So he's 6'6", and he wasn't good at scoring goals. He was good at chucking knuckles. That's when you have the designated fighter. So
Right.
he's doing a shootout against our goalie who was on fire, Trevor Kidd, that year,
Yes.
and missed the attempt. Kidder was going to put his hand on the glove, and Peter jabbed at his glove and dislocated his shoulder in that skills competition. So that ended Kidder's career. Not career, but that ended his season.
Mm-hmm.
And then they made a bunch of trades to kind of, get us through the rest of the season. Brought in Mike Vernon in replacement for him and a couple other guys. And it just, that moment completely changed the trajectory of that season. We really thought we could do something, and then that happened, and the trades, and it just completely disrupted the chemistry that we had, and we never got even close to it again the rest of the season. And we lost in the first round that year.
And making the playoffs, it doesn't matter who NHL, MLB, NCAA, even high school. When you make that first round of the playoffs, you're always thinking, we have the team. Everyone does. Even now when you look at the playoffs to this day, everyone goes, we're going in, we're going to win it.
Yep.
That's one thing I remember. And I remember the first time I went into the playoffs and we lost in the first round, I said, all right, I'm pissed. I'm going in for the second and the third, and I want that championship.
Yeah.
And I remember going to a championship and losing, not once, not twice, but 3 times. I felt like the Buffalo Bills of high school football. And that's hard because you work so hard in the off season, training, eating differently, doing what you have to do. And as an NHLer, I know off seasons are not easy for everybody. They take a little break for like a week or two, and everyone goes right back to, training mode. To make sure they're in tip top shape. And as a hockey player, I gotta admit, man, I look at football, I look at baseball, I look at all sports, and I think hockey has to be the most grueling sport because of how much time you're on the ice, how much time you're away from family, how much time it's everything. When everyone goes, oh, it's only 84 games. No, it's 84 games away from family. You're going from August when training camp starts till June, and there's only like a month off technically. When you look,
if you go all the way,
yeah. If you look at it now, look at Stanley Cup Finals in 2024 starts next Saturday. And for this might air a little later, but that's June 8th, guys, just in case.
Yeah.
When you look at everything, you had a very solid career as an NHL. You did play.
Thank you.
393 NHL games, which is, in a 12-year career, that's an amazing thing. I think, you made it to the show, as everyone says.
Thank you.
And you retired, and you actually became the founder of Sniper's Edge Hockey at one point, and you sold the company in 2018, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So when you retired from the sport, you started your company. What were you? Now you retired. You started the company. What were you thinking? Like, I noticed. Just keep in mind, folks, he is a coach too now. So if you see me say coach, there's a reasoning why.
Yeah. So when I retired, I had from Florida. The only offer I had was for Colorado.
Okay.
And I signed it, and I had a really tough time that summer. I just had a lot of little nagging injuries, and just to put it into a little bit, you get mad at players. You want to win and stuff like that, but I'm still having residual stuff happen because of what I did at hockey. I just had my 10th surgery. And there's a price to pay. So I know that there's not one hockey player that I played with that didn't want to win every single game that we played. You prepared the same, you did everything. And, that's probably one of the hardest things that I have to deal with now, is because I deal with so many different players. And then I have 2 boys that are still playing.
Yes.
Is just the ups and downs that they all go through, that I know it hurts, and there's nothing you can do, but, you know, all these bad things that happen to us, you know, those are the tattoos. I see you got tattoos, you
Yeah,
know, those are our tattoos that define us, you know.
yeah.
But you know, from when I retired, so in Colorado, I went out there early just to kind of acclimate to the altitude, and I just, my body, I hurt so bad, and my body basically just told me you couldn't do it anymore. So we went out to Quebec to play in an exhibition game. My back went out. I told the coach, and that was about it. So I got home, and my number one goal, you know, you kind of figure, you know, there's two things that happen when you retire. When it's over, it's over.
Mhm.
Like the NHL, they take away all your like access to the you know, whatever stuff that you had access to. I mean, it's
Right.
like immediate. But I didn't know what I was going to do, but I know that I didn't want to work for anyone ever again. I didn't like other people being in control of my destiny. So I was lucky because that last concert, yeah, Metallica,
Nice.
that last contract that I had with Florida, you know, that gave us, my wife and I and family, the opportunity to not have to jump into something really quick to pay bills. So I had hired a guy to remodel a cabin I had. I'm in Minnesota. We had a lake place in Wisconsin to remodel a place. And I just called him when I got home, getting an update. And he goes, Lance, I haven't even started. And I go, well, I don't know anything about construction, and I don't have anything going on, but if you teach me, you know, I'll work hard for you. So he paid me $25 an hour, and I spent the next 2.5 years remodeling a couple cabins that I had, and then I helped him build a house. And during that time, my oldest was he wasn't interested in hockey down in Florida, just because none of his friends played. You know, it was still for young kids like that.
Right.
So he, when we got back, we introduced him to hockey, and he took a liking to it. And then, you know, if you play in the NHL and you got a kid that wants to play hockey, you got to coach, Dad. You know, and I didn't know anything about coaching. So I really just started to become a student of the game, and I got into coaching. I got into doing clinics and stuff like that. But really, I didn't know much. It was just learning from other coaches that had a lot more experience. I mean, you think that because you played in the NHL or a high level that you're automatically, you know, going to be a great coach. I don't care. You know, put someone on the ice with 5-year-olds that have never skated before, and you put them through a half an hour of just trying to make them not cry.
Yeah.
You know, that's hard. I can do that now. You know, I can manage that, but I didn't know it back then. So, you know, I got into coaching, and what I was really good at was taking advantage of players that weren't aware of me when, you know, where I was when they were on the ice. They had their head down too long when they had the puck in their stick, or they bobbled it when they received the pass. And I was good at anticipation, and there was normally a meet and greet after that, and bodies were flying. But that's what I was good at. So the skill stuff, as far as stick handling and teaching shooting and stuff like that, knew nothing about it. And that just started a journey that I didn't know would have, you know, developed into what I have going on now. So Sniper's Edge Hockey is an off-ice training aids business that I started in 2004. It was called Sweet Hockey back then, and my first product was it's called a Sweet Hand stick handling trainer. So just think about lining up 10 pucks in a straight line where they're about a foot apart, but now raise those pucks up and put a connecting arm. So you got to slip it through the opening, but you got to lift your stick up and over. So that was my first product, and it evolved into now where we got flooring, we got garage tarps, shooter tutors, pass returners, balls, pucks, and all that, you know, we did until 2018 when we sold that company. But that didn't exist back then when my kids were little. I
No.
think there's a company called Milek that sold flooring, because once the composite sticks came in, and they were so expensive, if you're playing road hockey or shooting off of concrete or tar, it's going to destroy the bottom of the stick.
Oh yeah.
So that's where the flooring came in, is for that. So I just started it, developed that product, and it evolved to where you can set up a whole system. And I really just started to get into a higher level of understanding all the different steps of stick skill development. That's where I had a general knowledge, a pretty good level knowledge to, through probably college, for skating and agility and technical stuff. But
Right.
I knew that there was something deeper from stick skill development. Now, what I do now, I don't do any on ice stuff. It's all at my house. I got a facility underneath my garage, so it's just in tennis shoes with a stick and no helmet. So it's nice because, like, my boys, they love to be able to be working on their game, but they don't have to drive to the rink, put on their gear, put on their skates, and then take it all off. They can work on their hands. So I'm like, how can I go to the beginning? Like, when you first pick up a stick for the first time, no one ever remembers that, but I'm like, I'm going to teach myself opposite hand. So I'm going to track it. I'm going to keep track of how I felt and everything. So I budgeted 3 to 4 days a week for 30 minutes to come down to my space. And I also now have an online.
It's like technical difficulties today.
No, what's happening is I have a low battery, I guess. I don't know why it's not charging, but hopefully it'll hang with us. But I have an online program. It's called onlinehockeytraining.com. That's the website. But I have just over 1,200 off-ice stick handling, passing, and shooting drills. So I'm want to learn. So I'm doing this opposite hand stuff, and I just work my program. And the first couple of weeks, that's no fun because it's so awkward, clunky. But I stuck with it, and about halfway through the third month is when it happened. I'm like down here going, "Holy crap! I got some opposite hand mojo now." So, with the exception of shooting from far out, I haven't been able to do that because it hurts my wrist. But pretty much any skill that a player can do with a stick, I can do it either hand. And if you didn't know what hand I was, you'd be challenged to find out what hand I was. So that gave me a knowledge of the progression, how long it takes to, really turn the needle or move the needle in a significant way where, the kid knows, like, they understand now the return on investment. And I can do that in less than 3 months if they just put in the time at home. So, I just started that, and I do lessons now with kids. They come over here. I work with them for either 90 or 60 minutes. I have my online program. I'm still a hockey dad, watching, during the season, probably 4 games a week. And then I don't know if I mentioned the podcast, and
You did.
but yeah, I don't do much except that. I don't go out. I used to be a social butterfly, and when I was coaching out at the bar after games, but now I'm pretty dialed in, and I'm right where I should be in the hockey world.
And that's, like I said, amazing career, amazing what you're doing now. You know what I mean? And especially your 2 boys, because one's in Nashville, if I remember correctly, one's in Nashville Predator and
So
Chicago Blackhawks.
my oldest, he was drafted by Nashville, and since then he's played for them, the Minnesota Wild, the Montreal Canadiens. He was with Pittsburgh for a short time. He was involved in that Carlson trade last summer.
Yes, I remember that trade.
Traded to Chicago this year, where when Bedard got hurt, he was the guy that they brought in and gave him the opportunity to kind of fill that role till he got better, and he couldn't score a point to save his life. So he got worked out of the lineup, got put on waivers, got sent down to Rockford after he cleared, and it took him a while didn't, I shouldn't say it didn't take him a while, but he didn't score for a long time, but he got his mojo back. And from the time that he got down to the AHL the second time that year, I read somewhere that he got the most points in the whole AHL from that point on, but never got called up again. He's a free agent this year. My youngest just finished his third year at the University of Minnesota and is in the process of deciding if he's going to go back to there for his fourth year or to turn pro. He was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens.
Okay. And again, respectable teams again, you know what I mean? Montreal. When you look at all this, it's exciting as a dad too, you know what I mean? For two of your boys going on and trying to chase the dream too to get to the show, like your oldest has done already. I remember seeing the name when Bernard went down. I'm like, like here we go. This is interesting because I'm always a big fan of the original six teams. I'm a
Yeah.
diehard original six New York Ranger fan, but I always like seeing the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, I love seeing the Boston Bruins, Canadians. When I see those teams get together, it's so amazing. You know what I mean? Just the nostalgia of the history of the NHL starts with those teams. And of course, Montreal being one of the most winning Stanley Cup championship teams that you ever see back in the day. But
It's
I
funny
get
that you say that. It's funny that you say that because do you remember original six? So do you remember a player that played for the Canadians or heard of him named Terry Harper? Played. He was
sounds familiar.
so the penalty box
Yes.
that you see today, that wasn't like it back in the 60s. And Terry Harper, uh, he was with the Canadians, and I think it was Bill Pulford. But there used to only be one penalty box when it was the original
Oh,
six.
wow.
So when they would get a penalty, you would go in one box. And until Terry Harper and Bill Pulford, I'm sorry if I get that wrong, but I think it's right. But they got in a fight in the penalty box after they got in there. And then 10 days later, that's when
They have the
they
separate penalty
separated them.
box.
But I tell you, you say the original six. There was a player that I trained who's from California, but he was going to school here.
Mm.
I had a lesson with him a few months ago, and he lives out in California. And one of his neighbors is this Terry Harper, who won 5 Stanley Cups with the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh my
Who,
God.
he's 84 years old, and you know, and I had him on the podcast,
That's
and
amazing.
it was this. He still skates like twice a week and stuff like that, but this game is pretty cool. And when the rivalries are awesome. I mean, I
Mhm.
love the fans, how much you care about your team and stuff like that. And it's a stinking hard championship to win. But, I'm blessed to still be a part of it. It's my world. And I'm grateful to have acquired the knowledge that I have over the years to be able to pass that on to others that have lofty goals in this sport, because it can be so rewarding.
It is rewarding. And I mean, like I said, you had an amazing career at the NHL. You did so much for, the kids, training them and getting them, stick handling skills, puck skills, shooting skills. And your two kids now on their way, in their NHL prime, getting there and then possibly going pro with your youngest. I mean, you've done a lot as a dad and as a husband, and and you had a great career, my friend. And that's something, you gotta say you're very proud of, man. I could say that. And it's the first time I'm meeting you today. And to me, it's like hearing this is so amazing, you know what I mean? Because I don't get a chance to talk to people like you all the time. And when I do, I'm ecstatic because
Well, thank
it,
you.
it's just great knowledge that you have. And you have your podcast, which I can't say enough of saying you're just keep up the great work on that, because it'll, like, for me too, I've been doing this on my own for a year and a half. So
Yeah.
I just keep pushing until some people start recognizing who I am, and getting a person like you in the NHL. I had Leonard Marshall. Hopefully, when these shows get released, people are like, oh, that looked like a fun show. I want to go on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the whole point to making connections. And if I could do anything for you too, for your podcast, I'd gladly do it too. You know what I mean? I've mentioned it. I'll mention today on Instagram, on Facebook, and Twitter that I just recorded with you. And I'll mention
Cool.
your podcast too, because I want people to know about it.
Yeah. Well, it was intentional that it's called the Hockey Journey Podcast, because everyone has a journey, and it's very similar as rising to the ranks and
Mhm.
getting an opportunity. But the one thing that is is what I like to hear, because you know, you look at me, you say, all right, 393 games in the NHL, great, awesome. But no one knows the story of the hockey player. And I think you mentioned that, the backstories of, you know, when you broke your collarbone, or,
Right.
you know, you had a family member pass away, you know, and you had to still perform. Um, you know, those are the stories of resilience that I get to hear on a regular basis. And when you know, you get someone saying that, hey, I listened to that episode, and you know, that was awesome, that really helped me, that was inspiring, then that just gives us a shot of adrenaline to do it for one more week, right? You
Right.
know.
Exactly. I mean, like I so pre-record all my shows because the summer I'm going to try to take some time off this summer, you know, to be with my family a lot more. So, I mean, for me, the opportunity even to talk to an NHL or an NFL or even an NBA, or for me, it's an amazing, because I've seen you play when I was younger, and I'm seeing your children and your nephew playing now. It's like it's amazing for me, you know what I mean, to see, you know, your teachings with them as a Ranger, as a Blackhawk, as possibly a Montreal Canadian. You know what I mean? It's amazing to see that, because people don't realize the hard work and dedication goes to any kind of pro sport. But
Yeah.
hockey, like I said, is the most grueling, I think. And me personally, I never trained for hockey. I trained mostly for football, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I think hockey has to be the most grueling all year round sport anytime. Um, in America, I think, because you see the injuries. You know, I remember Blake Wheeler with that big injury he had in February,
Yeah.
and he came back, worked hard. I thought his career was over too when I found out how bad it was.
Yeah.
And
No, resilience, just a love for the sport.
mm,
And you know, you get to the level that you love your red, white, and blue shirt guys.
yep,
You know, they've had some skin thickening, you know, experiences, and
yeah,
it's never easy to go through. But the deeper you get into it, you know, the older we get as individuals, we just learn how to cope with it a little easier, you know, and get through it and get on with work and focus on what's in our control.
yeah. And I gotta say, Lance, guys, this is probably one of my favorite interviews I've had in a while. I mean, I had a lot of great interviews, but to talking hockey with somebody who's played it, coaching it, and is teaching it is for me is an amazing thing. So I really thank you for taking the time out today. I'm glad we were able to connect today. Actually, when
Yeah, I
you
have
were,
one more thing. I have
yes,
one
sir,
more thing that I got to mention.
yes,
So
sir.
I mentioned that I was not known as a point producer. You know, for me, scoring a goal or getting an assist was having a big hit. But the one fact that I'll always have, and now that you and I did this interview, I feel
Oh, I just lost Lance, and I think I know why. God, no way. That just happened. Got it. All right, go ahead, Lance. We're good.
let me just get my camera on. Come on.
It takes a minute. There you go.
Okay. All right. Sorry, my iPad went out on me. So
That's all right. I kind of figured, I'm like, I have a feeling I know why he signed off.
So, anyways, I should tell you, my first ever NHL goal I scored in Madison Square Garden against Mike Richter.
Uh,
I don't think it went in clean. It went off about 2 or 3 shin pads before it found its way. But my first ever NHL goal was scored in
the
a place
Garden.
you put at a high place in your heart.
Still, but that's still amazing. Just to say your first NHL goal is at the Garden and
It was cool.
against Richter too. One of my besides Lundqvist, Visa, Richter, Blackburn, Weeks. Like I said, all those goalies are so near and dear as a Ranger. I love them all, man. But that's still amazing to say your first goal was at the Garden. That had been I couldn't even explain how that would have felt probably for your boy.
Yeah, no, it was pretty cool, and we had a fun night out in the city that night. That's for sure.
Nice. Well, listen, Lance, I can't thank you again for coming on the show. Before we sign off for the night or for the day, actually, let everybody know where they can find you actually with your show and everything.
Okay, so my podcast is on, it's called the Hockey Journey Podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and YouTube. My online off ice stick handling, passing, and shooting program is available at onlinehockeytraining.com. That's just over 1,200 drills put into 64 different progressive lesson plans. And then lastly, I do lessons here in Minnesota, and my website for that for more information is called sweethockeycoach.com. Sweethockeycoach.com. And that's about it.
Wow.
That's my life.
And I really appreciate you sharing that with me and everyone that I want to release this to, man. It's just an amazing career. And Lance, thank you so much. And guys, as you can see, dreams do come true. You work hard, you do the things right, put in the time, you will make something of yourself. So how I always end my show is nothing but love, peace, and happiness. And good night, everybody.